A judge publicly humiliated a royal guard during a routine court hearing only to find himself in handcuffs when his behavior crossed the line. The silent serviceman's unexpected response left the entire courtroom stunned. Here's what happened now. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow at this very same time, we're dropping another powerful Royal Guard story that you won't want to miss. On a bright morning in London, Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood, a decorated member of the Queen's Guard, stepped through the doors of Westminster Crown Court. Clad in his full ceremonial uniform, scarlet tunic, polished buttons, and tall bearskin cap, he drew respectful glances from passers-by. His appearance wasn't for spectacle. Blackwood had been urgently called to testify in a simple burglary case, something he had witnessed while off duty. A proud representative of the regiment, he stood as a symbol of tradition, discipline, and service. Despite the grandeur of his attire, Blackwood came with modest intentions, to speak the truth, then return to his post at Buckingham Palace. Little did he know, his quiet presence would soon spark a courtroom confrontation unlike anything the British justice system had seen in years. For a man who had served with dignity and honor, this day would become a test, not of ceremony, but of character. In a world that often misunderstands formality for vanity, the soldier would remind everyone present that behind the uniform stood not just a man of duty, but of depth, integrity, and calm strength. And for the seniors watching, it would serve as a powerful lesson in respect earned, not demanded. The courtroom was meant to be a place of order and respect, but for Judge Victor Harrington, tradition had become a stage for his pride. When Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood entered in full ceremonial dress, fulfilling military protocol, the judge couldn't hide his disdain. Dismissing the Queen's Guard as theatrical, Harrington questioned the soldier's presence, mocking his uniform and medals. His remarks, sharp and sarcastic, were meant to humiliate. Yet Blackwood, standing tall in the face of ridicule, responded with steady grace. Without raising his voice or showing offense, he calmly cited military codes and legal precedent, revealing a knowledge that far surpassed the judge's expectations. For the seniors watching, it was a reminder that wisdom and humility often walk hand in hand. The judge saw a toy soldier, but the courtroom saw a man of discipline and quiet dignity. This moment reminded all in attendance, and all of us watching, that judging someone by their appearance or role can blind us to their deeper value. In an age that often rushes to judgment, Blackwood's poise offered something rare and meaningful, a powerful example of what real composure looks like when faced with unfairness from those in authority. What began as a routine court appearance quickly unraveled into something much deeper. Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood, a decorated Queen's Guard, had come to testify in a simple burglary case. Dressed in his full ceremonial uniform, scarlet tunic, polished buttons, and tall bearskin cap, he stood out against the somber robes of the courtroom. But instead of focusing on the case, Judge Victor Harrington chose to single him out. With biting sarcasm, he belittled the lieutenant's attire, questioned his intelligence, and mocked his military service. The tension built slowly, then all at once. Harrington's remarks became increasingly personal and unprofessional. He accused Blackwood of being nothing more than a costumed figurehead, unworthy of standing in his courtroom. Yet throughout this, Blackwood remained composed. His posture never faltered. His replies were courteous, clear, and rooted in both military discipline and legal expertise, something the judge failed to anticipate. Then came the moment no one expected. In a flash of anger, Harrington hurled his gavel at the lieutenant. But Blackwood caught it mid-air, a reflex born of combat training. The courtroom fell silent. The balance of power had shifted. What had been intended as humiliation became a moment of revelation. The judge's outburst was not just inappropriate, it was criminal. And Blackwood, calm as ever, stated the law with precision. In doing so, he reminded everyone present that dignity doesn't come from titles or robes, but from one's character under pressure. For older Canadians, who have lived through decades of change and witnessed their share of injustice, this story resonated on a deeper level. It was a quiet lesson in courage, a reminder that real honor comes not from medals or rank, but from how we choose to act when others abandon respect. In most courtrooms, the judge's word is final, but on this extraordinary day, it was a Queen's Guard who would remind the room of what justice truly means. After being mocked, insulted, and humiliated in front of a full gallery, Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood stood firm, calm, collected, and unwavering. The judge, Victor Harrington, had underestimated the man behind the ceremonial uniform. Fueled by arrogance, Harrington crossed a line that no man of the law should ever approach. In a moment of uncontrolled rage, he hurled his gavel at Blackwood. What followed stunned the courtroom. With remarkable reflexes honed from military service, Blackwood caught the gavel mid-air, gracefully, without aggression. The silence that fell was not just from shock, but from sudden clarity. In that instant, the power no longer belonged to the bench. It belonged to justice. Blackwood, still at attention, recited the law calmly and precisely. His experience in both military service and legal education became evident as he laid out the judge's violations with authority. Veterans in the gallery stood in support. Witnesses stepped forward. A chief magistrate arrived, and in a reversal rarely seen in court, it was the judge, not the witness, who was escorted out, his robe now a symbol of shame rather than honor. To many watching, especially older Canadians who understand the values of service, honor, and self-control, this moment spoke volumes. Blackwood didn't need to shout or demand attention. He embodied integrity in action. His respectful restraint held more strength than any outburst ever could. For those who have worn uniforms themselves, or lived through eras where respect was earned, not demanded, this story is more than courtroom drama. It's a reflection of the power in standing tall, even when others seek to tear you down. What began as a simple courtroom appearance took a dramatic turn when the balance of power shifted before everyone's eyes. After Judge Victor Harrington's shameful display of hostility, it was Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood who calmly stood his ground, not with aggression, but with dignity. As silence settled over the stunned courtroom, Blackwood didn't gloat. He didn't retaliate. Instead, he quietly cited the law, reminding everyone, including the judge himself, that justice applies to all, regardless of rank or robe. What made the moment so powerful wasn't just the legal correction, it was the presence of character. Blackwood revealed something few expected. Behind the ceremonial uniform was not only a seasoned soldier, but a trained legal mind. A former barrister with a degree from Oxford, his quiet resolve exposed the very insecurities that drove the judge to lash out in the first place. When veterans in the courtroom stood to support him and the chief magistrate arrived to relieve Judge Harrington of his duties, a lesson echoed through the halls of justice. True respect is earned, not demanded, especially in Canada, where service, military or civil, is revered. This story reminds us that humility and strength can walk hand in hand. For many older Canadians who have seen institutions evolve over time, this moment brought a sense of justice that runs deeper than headlines. It reaffirmed faith in those who serve with quiet honor, and it reminded us all that appearances can be deceiving. But character always reveals itself in the moment it matters most. As Lieutenant Blackwood left the courtroom, he did so not as a man seeking applause, but as someone who upheld the values we all wish to see in those in power: grace, restraint, and the courage to speak truth, even when silence would have been easier. As the dust settled and Judge Harrington was escorted from his own courtroom, Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood didn't claim victory. He simply resumed his duty. In the wake of the scandal, his actions weren't just acknowledged, they were quietly commended. A note in his service record read simply, "Maintain dignity of the regiment while upholding principles of justice." It wasn't fame or recognition that motivated Blackwood. It was a deep-seated commitment to integrity. For older Canadians who remember a time when public service was about honor rather than headlines, Blackwood's composure echoed the values we hold dear: duty, respect, and quiet courage. He reminded us all that those who wear the uniform, even one as ceremonial as the Queen's Guard, often carry responsibilities far beyond what meets the eye. His legal knowledge, military discipline, and moral backbone weren't just tools for defending the crown. They became instruments for defending justice itself. Blackwood's story is more than an inspiring anecdote. It's a timely reminder that in a world of noise and posturing, the most powerful voices are often the calmest. And sometimes, the person who appears to be just a symbol can turn out to be the very conscience of the room. What Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood showed that day wasn't just discipline, it was something far greater: restraint in the face of provocation and courage in defense of what's right. In a world that often mistakes volume for leadership, Blackwood proved that true strength speaks in calm tones, stands tall without arrogance, and never forgets its purpose. As Judge Harrington unraveled in a display of authority gone astray, it was Blackwood, the so-called toy soldier, who upheld the dignity of the courtroom. Without ever raising his voice, he reminded everyone watching, both in the gallery and across Canada, that respect is earned not through fear, but through character. His quiet defiance was not about pride, it was about principle. For many Canadian seniors who have lived through decades of change, this story is both familiar and refreshing. We've seen powerful positions abused, and we've also seen everyday individuals rise up with quiet conviction. Blackwood stood among them, not just as a soldier, but as a guardian of justice. In the end, it wasn't the robes of the judge, but the actions of the guard that defined honor. And for all of us watching, it was a powerful reminder that sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who stays calm and stands firm. In a world that often rewards the loudest voice or the highest title, Lieutenant Nicholas Blackwood's story reminds us that real strength often lies in quiet conviction. For older Canadians who've lived through generations of social change, war, and evolving institutions, this tale is a comforting return to values many were raised on: duty, respect, and personal responsibility. Blackwood didn't need to shout or grandstand to make an impact. When confronted by an abusive judge, he relied not on status, but on calm wisdom, discipline, and the courage to stand firm in the face of power gone astray. That kind of integrity doesn't just apply in courtrooms, it applies in our daily lives, in how we treat others, speak out against injustice, or support someone who's vulnerable. For seniors, this story is a powerful reminder that our values still matter. We may be retired from professional life, but not from moral influence. Whether it's standing up for truth, mentoring the next generation, or leading by example, we each have the power to make a difference, not with noise, but with quiet, unwavering integrity. True strength, as this story proves, is often found not in rank or uniform, but in character.